podcast. Let's get it on.
All right. So what do you want to hit first, man?
What's going on, man? I guess the video's not going to work. Let's keep rolling with it, though. It's all good. So,
All right.
so it's good to see everyone tonight. Welcome to the Full Press Commanders podcast. My name is George Carmi. I'm here with my man Ryan Krawczyk. How you doing today, bud?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. Me and
Of
my
course,
cousin.
man.
I love it.
I love it. Yeah, so these are two of my guys. I've been talking to you for a long time. You might know Ryan from what's at What's Give FF on Twitter handle. We also have Mark. How you doing, Mark? How you doing today?
Good.
That's awesome, man. So these guys are basically just people I've been keeping in touch with for a very long time for the Washington Commanders. Just kind of following the team here or there. And we're going to preview basically the whole Washington offseason. And we're going to kind of talk about what they've done so far, how effective they've been, and then preview the draft upcoming. So Gentlemen, Washington's whole landscape and salary cap changed about 10 days ago. And we got Carson Wentz. We're very familiar with him from the Philadelphia Eagles. He played for the Colts last year and now has joined Washington. Now that the dust has settled, Ryan, we'll start off with you. Now that the dust has settled, how do you feel about Carson Wentz becoming a Washington Commander? Do you see this as more as a long-term solution or more like a one-year stopgap? How are you feeling about all this?
So that's a really great question because, when I heard the news of Wentz getting traded, I'll be honest, like for the first 30 seconds, it was a little bit of a gut shot, right? Because we've been talking all offseason about Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson or, all these big names that we were thinking coming in. And I actually do really like the move, though. And I'll kind of break down why. I think when Aaron Rodgers signed his extension with the Packers, I feel like he totally reset the quarterback market, right? So I think when you look at those top tier quarterbacks, you're going to start to see that $40 to $50 million range. And it almost was reminiscent of like when Derek Carr got his extension and he kind of reset the market a little bit and everybody was like, wow, that's a lot for a quarterback. And now the Carr deal looks pretty good. But I feel like when you look at Carson Wentz, he's expensive this year, right? $28 million. And I think that's why people were a little bit concerned. Why did we give up draft capital? But I actually think it gives us a ton of flexibility because although he's a little bit expensive, he has $0 of dead cap in 2023 and 2024. It opens up our entire ability to do whatever we want at the quarterback position for medium and long term. And then I look at it as, that was probably the next best option of what we had, of what was available on the market. I mean, since 2017, Wentz has had 124 touchdowns, right? Three touchdown games. He's had 16 of them, ninth in the NFL since 2017.
We don't see that in Washington very often. Go
ahead. We've had it
continue.
eight times since 2017.
Wow. Okay.
So to me, I'm excited. I think it gives us the salary cap flexibility. I think it gives us the ability to draft a quarterback to groom behind Wentz if we want to long term, but it also allows us that flexibility of, that cap relief if we want to go that direction, but also I think he's going to be an upgrade in that vertical offense that Scott Turner likes to run.
There you go. I'm right there with you, Brian. I'll definitely elaborate more so, but I want to hear from Mark because I kind of have the sense that Mark has a different perspective on this. What do you got, Mark?
I mean, I started out obviously the gut punch very, very similar. I saw my phone and I was like, I don't know how to respond. I don't know. The text messages flying in from Cowboy fans, Giant fans all over the place. It hit you. My father going nuts. But he has all the physical ability that we haven't seen in ages. And you saw last year with Scott Turner's offense that they wanted to push the ball. How many times did you see De'Ami Brown open down the field and he wasn't even looked at? I think there's going to be a huge focus on really going deep. And attacking, defenses. Everyone's crushing, whether it's Wentz, whether it's Scott Turner, the organization, there's not many positive people for the Commanders this year.
Yeah.
And there's just huge question marks because we haven't seen anything. So I personally think that the potential is unlimited. Everyone's talking about we need a receiver. We need another receiver. We haven't seen Curtis Samuel. We really haven't seen De'Ami Brown. So we basically have a brand new roster coming out next year with a quarterback that we haven't seen a quarterback play like this since Kirk Cousins. And personally, I think he could have more talent than Cousins. So it's just a matter of him not making the mental mistakes and forcing things.
No, I'm with you. I think we're all kind of on the same page here. So, I was sitting in a professional development meeting and basically my phone was just blowing up and everybody was like, I'm sorry, George, I apologize. People were apologizing to me because basically Carson Wentz joined Washington. And I was like, oh my God, like what's going on? And like, I felt that immediate punch when I first came in. I think the hardest part was we had such high hopes with Russell Wilson and even Deshaun Watson. We kind of had that high expectations. But then what ended up exactly, I kind of laugh at it now. But what ended up happening was like, we had that high expectations. We heard that Russell Wilson basically turned he ended up did not wanting to come to Washington or whatever the deal was. Maybe Seattle never wanted to trade him in the first place. And then within 24 hours, 48 hours, we have a new quarterback sitting in our laps. That made me feel uncomfortable, but as time kind of went ahead and I kind of processed more and started looking at the contract and started looking at the game film, I started to like more and more things about Carson Wentz. I love what Ryan said. Basically, I love the flexibility that it offers. Like we have a great, fantastic contract, and people were like, "Oh man, like we're taking $28 million on to our roster," and that's tough. Obviously that's tough, but you know what? That's what it costs for a quarterback in the NFL. And honestly, that's more of the middle of the pack, more the lower end of the pack. It's going to start going down as more extensions start coming in. So having him for $28 million is kind of pricey, but over the next 3 years, it goes 28, 27, 26, starts to go down a little bit. But as Ryan, as you all know, even the listeners know, after this year, there is that clean cutoff if we want to go that route. And, that would be disappointing. I'll be honest with you. If we just had 1 year rental, we basically traded off a third pick and I believe a second round pick next year due to that, initiation for the 70% of playing. I think that's going to be disappointing if we lose him for 1 year. What I love about Wentz, though, is that the fact that we have him under contract for 3 years, we could cut him after 2. We can go all 3 years with him. We could essentially, let's say we draft someone in next year's draft class. We could trade Wentz potentially because quarterbacks hold their values. We have that bargaining chip. Like, how often do we hear the narrative this year that, the Seahawks would trade Russell Wilson if there was a viable option coming back? We do have a viable option. He might not be a top 10, but he is that 15 to 20 range. And then finally, to kind of wrap up my thoughts on this, I agree with you guys. I think watching this game film, he is an athletic specimen. Like I know we always hate on him so much when he's in Philadelphia, but he's 6'5", 240. He can run a 4.6. He has a cannon of an arm. He does have that athletic profile with that high upside. Watching this game film, he does some amazing plays, like the things Kirk Cousins couldn't even do, where he could just launch it down the field, flick of a wrist, right? The problem is he also has those boneheaded plays where he forces the ball or, he holds on to the ball too much and he fumbles a lot, which is a issue that I am concerned about long-term in regard to fumbling. But altogether, I think it's pretty good, pretty good transaction. I'd rather do this than be the Saints or the Panthers right now. It's kind of sitting there with even the Colts right now, sitting there.
That's where it would have been.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it would have been. So that's kind of where I feel. And before we move on to the next question, do you guys want to jump on that or add anything more?
Yeah, just a couple of quick points is like, I feel like people remember his last year in Philly, and that's really shaped the narrative on Carson Wentz.
I agree.
I think he's a much better player. And when I think about Scott Turner's offense, and I make fun of myself because I talk about the vertical offense all the time, but it is a very critical piece of Scott Turner's offense, and we haven't had a fit for him. Kyle Allen, Alex Smith on one leg, Taylor Heineke, those are not fits for that offense. You need that guy that's going to be able to go from far hash to sideline to be able to push downfield, and we really haven't had that person. So I feel like, if you look at, take out that last season in Philly, right, and you look at 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, you have a guy who has 108 to 28 touchdown interception ratio. That's almost 4-1. You got a guy that, his back is an issue, and he's not as mobile as he used to be. He's still pretty mobile, and he may not ever be that MVP season-like guy, but that's a guy that's going to give us probably the best quarterback we've seen potentially since RG3's rookie season. And I think we talked about the flexibility, but I still think it opens up the opportunity for you to be flexible in the draft, where if a guy that you love falls to 11, it's the most important position in the league. We've seen how long it's taken us 30 years to get a long-term solution. We haven't had it. I could still see us pulling the trigger or taking the 11 pick, trading back, getting more picks in the draft, and then using a later pick in the first or in the second round to address it. But I mean, I look at Wentz, and we haven't had an upside of a guy like him in a very long time. I mean, he's the only quarterback in the history of the NFL that's thrown for 4,000 plus yards without having a receiver go over 500 yards. That's a remarkable stat. Like, I don't think people realize how little talent he's had around him over the years and why that's dictated some of the narrative around his success. But happy about Carson Wentz. I think people should get on board. And I think that contract and that zero dead cap space in 2023, 2024 is why it took the 2 picks to get him. And I think he paid the Ashburn tax, like you call it, right? Like it really 100%. Is like, not everybody wants to come here right now. So I think it's the best option we could have had, most flexible option we could have had. I'm really excited.
That's cool. That's awesome. And then Mark, what do you got?
Just to add real quick, the last 3 years we've started 4 quarterbacks every single year. If not, it's maybe a fifth. I think it was 4 over the last 3 years. So
something like that. Yeah, it's been a high turnover. I think Terry McLaurin's brought the ball from 10 different quarterbacks over his career.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it's real bad.
I hope next year's pick is a second rounder that we're giving up, because I think if that's the case, then it really was a success. And truthfully, I think the roster around him, even though there are some holes and there are positions you want to upgrade, I still think if he plays 70% of the plays, then we will have success overall as a whole organization, as a team. So
George, can I ask you real quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
I got a question for you. Are you confident in Taylor Heinicke if something happens to Wentz with his injury history, or would you like to see us go after a younger guy to groom and potentially be that guy that steps in if the injury happens later in the season?
So I like Heinicke as a short-term solution, and I think what's going to be interesting this year, guys, because we all go to the games and so on and so forth. I'm kind of worried that if Wentz starts to falter a little bit, there's going to be a segment of the fan base that's going to be chanting Heinicke, and rooting for him to go into the game. And I don't want that dynamic to happen. I want Ron Rivera, and it seems like he's going this direction, to identifying him as a clear-cut QB1.
That's exactly what happened last year, though. If you remember, when Fitz went down,
I was at that game.
The stadium was nuts.
It's nuts, man.
Nuts.
Yeah,
and because we had 2 bad drives to start.
That's true. And then I think Fitzpatrick also had a pretty poor off preseason as well. So he kind of started off slow in the preseason, so it didn't really look too well. And then that was Heinicke's first appearance after the Buccaneers game. So he was like still hot on their minds as well. So, but isn't that funny? It's just a retrospect of
I just laughed because it was so wild. Even
phenomenon.
It was phenomenon. Like shaking my head. Great, our quarterback just got hurt. And here comes Heinicke.
Yeah, exactly. Within a half. But just to go back to the question, I do not like. I know it sounds bad, but I do not want to go quarterback or very early, like at 11. I'd rather roster build. Maybe if we trade back, or maybe in the second round. But like ideal situation, I want to go wide receiver at 11, and I want to give Carson Wentz the green light. Like, you know what? Like, this is your last opportunity. You basically, you heard it in a statement the other day. He's like, I've been humbled. I've been through a lot. It's not gonna. This is my last opportunity. It's a short lifespan in the NFL. Give him a fair shot. Make him feel insulated and comfortable, and let's see what he got. If you give him that 1 year, there's a great QB draft class coming up next year. I do think Heinicke can spell him for a game or 2. I think it might be kind of fun for some of the people in the fan base. For me, it's always 17 games is the ideal situation, right? You always want your quarterback to play all 17 games. So in a dream scenario, Wentz plays well. Heinicke is a good enough backup. I mean, I think they might take a shot like Carson Strong or whatever, like late in the draft or something, whatever, 4th, 5th round or something, whatever they do. But I don't want Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett at 11. Like, I think, if you didn't think he was the guy, you wouldn't have chased after him anyway. And if you pick somebody in the first round, the expectations are really high. Like, he's expected to maybe start at the end of the year or start next year or whatever it is. It's just too much pressure, and I'm not too keen on it.
The one thing I think that might happen is I think we could really like a quarterback in this draft, right? It's just when you're sitting at 11, it's no guarantee that it's going to happen. So even if you like a guy, you can't go in at pick 11 saying we're going to go out and get that guy, right? Unless you're really wanting to mortgage the future. And I don't think any of these quarterbacks are like Kenny Pickett's the most day one ready, but he also probably has one of the lower ceilings compared to some of the other guys. So it's just tough. I mean, I still think it's an option. And I think it's like I was saying before, I would like to see us trade down. But, I do see guys like Malik Willis and even Matt Corral look at as like good fits for the long term. But neither of those guys are ready to step in day one. I think they knew that evaluating the quarterback. So I don't anticipate us going that direction, but I'm not going to be shocked if it does happen.
Yeah,
it's the most important position, right? Like nothing else matters if you don't have the quarterback. And if Wentz goes down, we know what we have, right? We have a middling football team if Wentz isn't playing. So
Yep. I think, I'm sure you guys read that John Kahn piece I was circulating this morning, talking about, talking to Joe Gibbs and Ron Rivera building up and having that whole checklist of what a quarterback entails. I think it was a really telling sign that they were like, you know what, after like a couple of weeks, like, you know what, we have to get a veteran. Like they didn't seem really too high on the rookie class. And that's a big sign for me. So that's interesting.
Yep.
George,
Anyway,
I need
go
you to
ahead.
do something for me though.
Go ahead.
A couple of years ago, being the eternal optimist that I am, I
Mhm.
told John Keim that he was a Cowboy fan, and he blocked me on Twitter. So every
Reach
time
out to him. Okay, got you.
I
got
can't
you.
I follow him on Instagram, but I can't follow him on Twitter.
Oh man, you missed out. John Collins, like, he's one of my favorite guys on Twitter. To be honest, I love him. He's great content right there.
So you want to see if
So-
George can get you unblocked? Is that
Yeah,
what you're trying to do here? Or
get
you
me
trying
that
to-
block.
I'll reach out. That's what like, who am I? But I'll try my best. Do what I can.
John,
All right,
if
but
you're
anyways-
listening, unblock Mark Crow. Come
Yeah,
on, man.
please.
Yeah, Mark Cornell, dude. Great content. Hit him up. All right, so let's pivot a little bit, right? Let's go on to our next part. So, we're all on Twitter, we're all having conversations here, and it kind of seems that like people are kind of getting frustrated with this whole off season. How do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like we're not being aggressive enough with our free agency pursuit? Are you disappointed with losing Ioannidis and Settle? Does Sheriff walking, does that affect you at all? At all? And like, I know I'm kind of throwing a big, just as a whole, how do you feel about the whole free agency altogether? Are we being aggressive enough? How do you feel about our losses? Mark, we'll start off with you.
Coming into this free agency, unlike last year, there wasn't a person where I was like, oh, we have to go get him.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ryan and I were talking, and there wasn't a guy where I was like last year was Curtis Samuel. We were like, we're going to sign him. We got to sign him. There wasn't that guy this year.
Mhm.
I think everyone agrees that if we can go sign Bobby Wagner right now, that would be, the play. But
Mhm.
am I upset about Sheriff leaving? No. As good of a football player as he was, it was okay. Which 4 games is he going to miss every year for us?
Yeah.
Ioannidis, I loved Ioannidis. I loved Ioannidis coming out of college.
Mhm.
I loved everything about that pick. But 2020, he got hurt. He played 3 games for us. And last year, he was not as productive as he was before 2019. He still played a lot of plays, but he just wasn't that presence in the pass rush where he was, before the injury year. So, at $8 million, who knows the conversation that took place with the contract? Did they say, hey, we need you to either restructure or take a pay cut? And he could have said no. So we don't know that conversation. Do I want him to leave? No. But at $8 million for a guy that's not producing, I'm okay with, them walking away from that. Settle wants to play. So he could have said, I'm gone regardless. So
Yeah.
I'm not you love the guy, you love certain players, we all have, the Commander's glasses on where we love every single player that plays for us, but I'm okay with them leaving to go to new homes. So I'm not upset with how free agency's gone. I'm glad they're not going crazy and spending stupid money, but I'd like to see a couple moves, but I like the slow play that, that they do. And, we take care, as long as we take care of our own and Terry and Duran, but I'm okay with it so far. Yes.
From what I gather, this is going to be the formula moving forward, at least in this whole Ron Rivera regime. I don't know if you guys are catching that yet, but like I've talked to some Panthers fans and other podcasts and things like that. They're like, don't get your hopes up in regard to free agency. They might target 1 or 2 big key cogs that they really, really want, make a big splash on that, and then kind of let the dust settle, then jump on those second tiers. And we've seen that now for a couple of years now, right? They wanted Curtis Samuel, they wanted William Jackson, they jumped on him, boom, got him. Then they kind of started to get the scraps later on, right? This year, they needed a quarterback. Carson Wentz was our big splash. And now they're going to kind of figure things out and kind of plug the rest of the team. I'm guessing, or I'm getting that from them, and I think most NFL teams use a strategy, is you basically kind of plug holes in free agency, kind of put things together. Then you approach the draft with the best player available mentality to kind of, those are the cornerstone building blocks moving forward. I think Washington, and we're going to talk about this later in the podcast, they still have some holes, but nothing that's extremely glaring, or at least in my opinion, we can talk about in a minute. But going back to the original question, Ryan, how do you feel? Do you feel are you upset with the lack of aggression for free agency? Are you thinking this is like the worst free agency ever with our departures of our team, or what's your thoughts?
No, I'm a lot more positive on it. We've been the off-season champions for 2 decades now, and it's never worked out for us, right? And I think people have gotten very used to that, like day one, like even the Albert Hainsworth contract, right? It was at like midnight of the night day free agency started that it started to like leak out and everything, and it was just we're used to that now, but it's not the right way to do it sometimes. And you look at the Jaguars, like you see them overspending, you see them getting into some expensive contracts like Brandon Sheriff and Christian Kirk and like really spending. And yeah, they're getting big names in, but that hurts you in the long run. And that's something that I think this staff has done a really good job of avoiding. So yes, they take that big swing. They go after Amari Cooper and offer him over $100 million, right? And we miss out on that one. And then, like you said,
swing is true. Fair point.
You get William Jackson, Carson Wentz, Curtis Samuel. Like those are that's fine. You get the one guy that you really want and you go after him heavy. I love that. And then they wait for that kind of resettling of the market. Like look at what Allen Robinson got compared to what Christian Kirk got. Like that's a bargain. And those are the types of contracts that we tend to get. And I love Brandon Sheriff. He's been great since he came in when we drafted him in the first round. And you know what? I compare him to Norwell's contract at what was it, 2 years, $10 million, $4.7 million guaranteed. That's a bargain. And
it's really good.
He's like the same age as Sheriff, right? So it's like they've both played at that all pro level. They've both, but one's getting 4 times the amount of money as the other. So that's, I'm happy that we're making moves like that. The one move that actually really got me was the JD McKissic signing because of how cheap he was when it looked like he was going to Buffalo. So I was really happy to hear when I logged on to Twitter. I was trying to like convince myself like, he's old, coming off a neck injury and going off of that. But like, I was pretty bummed. He was their second best weapon for, the last 2 years. So that I was really happy to see. And I think we still have a couple moves in us for depth on the interior line, middle linebacker, maybe secondary. But that's what the staff does. They don't create a sense of desperation going into the draft. They fill out the roster where they're not in a position where they have to get that one guy. They can kind of let the board falls as it does and go after that best player available. But very happy we ended up with McKissic.
I agree. It seems like the team has a focused point to maintain this, salary cap and have like flexible money moving forward, right? I think what I've been hearing from just listening to different podcasts and so on and so forth, we're setting ourselves up for that Terry McLaurin extension, right? With that Landon Collins $12 million cut post June 1st. Like he's going to be our big intention over the summertime. And I do feel that altogether, our salary cap distribution is pretty good. Like if you look around it, I'm looking over the cap right now. Carson Wentz, huge cap, $28 million, but your quarterback. We're about to get rid of Landon Collins. And then it falls down to $13 million for William Jackson, $12 million for Curtis Samuel, $11 million for Kendall Fuller. And then it's the big guns like Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, Deron Payne. So, no one is really taking up a large amount of our cap. It is kind of evenly distributed. And you can always kind of revamp that and kind of change that as time goes on. But you guys had Ryan had a great segue. JD McKissic, one of the most provocative, polarizing players in the NFL. Who would have thought, right? So, oh my God, right? So, earlier this week, we saw some big, we saw Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, kind of throw Washington on the bus and talked about dirty tactics about, hey, you know what? He was in our building. He's supposed to join our team. You're supposed to leave him alone. How do you guys feel about the whole JD McKissic scenario? And I know, Ryan, you kind of touched on it a little bit. So we'll go with Mark to kind of with a fresh voice. Mark, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about JD McKissic walking away? Were you devastated? Do you think Washington was in the wrong? What's your thoughts on all that?
I don't think they were in the wrong at all. Okay. It was Brandon Beane, actually, the Bills GM, that was crying.
Sorry. Oh, my fault. Sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Good. Yeah.
But not for nothing, but this is what happens in the tampering period every single year. This isn't the first time. Randy Gregory did it to the Cowboys this year, which was amazing.
Loved
but
it.
You're going to cry. Fantastic. You're going to cry about a 2-year, $7 million running back. That, not for nothing, the Commanders thought they were going to get an opportunity. They never got the opportunity. Then when they were given the opportunity, they took it. So, Zadarius Smith, he was signed with the Ravens and walked away from that contract. So this happens every single year. I didn't go back and look to see. I know it happened last year because this, I personally have a lovely spreadsheet of every free agent and I track every single one. And I know last year going back that I made changes because guys, changed their minds. So he went to the media about it. He's clearly upset because they haven't had a good running attack or, really rushing game. Not that McKissic's going to do that, but their running backs have been awful. So yeah, I'd be upset too if I were him. But
okay, but Washington didn't do anything wrong. Ryan, what do you got?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't mean to just give like the same answer, but it's sour grapes, man. Like to Mark's point, it happens every year. I think why he's pissed off is J.D. McKissic, 2 years, $7 million to fill a position that they don't really have that, versatile third down type back. Like Zach Moss fills it a little bit, and Devin Singletary's more of that like bowling ball style. But like they didn't have a J.D. McKissic, and I think that's a cheap, nice chess piece for them to add into that offense. And I think that's why he's really pissed. Like it's not the situation. The situation's definitely causing the anger too. But like if he wasn't a 2 year, $7 million pretty good bargain, I think it wouldn't have even been an issue. So I think it's just the value of that contract. I think he's frustrated that it got away, and now they have that hole that they're probably gonna have to fill in the draft. So I think that's probably where that's coming from.
No, I agree with you. McKissic's definitely a great bang for our buck in Washington. I think he's going to be very valuable. We'll see how we translate with Carson Wentz under center. I think he thrived with Taylor Heineke being, more of a check down quarterback, someone that kind of relied on, quick releases and couldn't really push the ball downfield. I'm sure you guys have heard the narrative already that Carson Wentz likes to push the ball on that second and third level. He kind of neglects his running back. So hopefully there is that marriage, and hopefully, Scott Turner's in Wentz's ear, like use McKissic. He's pretty flexible there. So we'll see how it goes.
100%.
Next talking point, right? So free agency. We have about 7. So right now, according to Over the Cap, this is before Norwell's contract is officially in the books. We have about $17 million in salary cap space. You have to allot roughly about $4 to $5 million for all the rookie classes coming in. So we have about $12 million loose before we do anything else, for any other maneuvering with our roster. What do you guys want to do with that $12 million? Do you want to put an emphasis on, re-signing our own players, like maybe extending Deron Payne, pursuing DeAndre Carter, looking into, some other, maybe getting Cornelius Lucas, signed as a swing tackle to get us on our team over there? Or would you rather go big free agent hunting, maybe grab 1 or 2 big free agents? And Ryan, we'll start off with you.
Yeah, so I want to take care of our own. I think the core that this team has put together, and the pieces started to fall last year with Jonathan Allen. I'd like to see, us be able to extend Terry McLaurin, Deron Payne, and keep some good contract flexibility. So when Montez Sweat and Chase Young and those guys start to come up over the years, that we have that. It was kind of the reason why I think 2 years ago in the offseason, people were talking about like Matt Ioannidis and, letting Payne go and maybe extending Ioannidis, but he never aligned up with age-wise to, I think, what they were trying to do. I think that's our core, right? I think it's Allen and Payne and Young and Sweat and McLaurin, and now hopefully
100%.
Carson Wentz. I want to see him take care of our own. There's no real big name that I want to go see us make a splash and go get. I'd rather see us build out some depth. Maybe you get like some more interior line help, like a Calais Campbell or someone like that might be able to come in and be that 1 year bargain. But that's all I want to do is get that like 1 year bargain and kind of let it be from there. I don't want to go and make a big splash. I want to make sure we take care of our own.
Interesting. That's a great point. Just so I'm going to go to you in a second, Mark. But
Yeah.
Why do you think? Well, Ryan, to kind of finish it off. Why do you think there's that narrative? Why do you think the fan base gets upset when we're not adding free agents? Or are they just? What's your perspective on that?
I think it's just you see the excitement of some of the other fan bases, and I think it's also 2 things. I think
agree.
it's one, it's that you're used to the Dan Snyder era being that like huge name, and this type of year is always like the best time of year as a Washington Commander fan, or it's I think that's a little bit of the change.
Seeing the big splashes around the league, it's kind of like your eyes are kind of getting wide. Like I wish we had that too. Okay.
Yeah. 100%. And I just think people aren't used to us building the right way. It's the first time we've had a good front office in a long time. And I think it's just people are wanting that big splash. And I think it's also that desperation of we haven't been successful for so long that they just want to feel like we're going to be successful. They want to see us bring in those 1 or 2 names that they feel like can make it happen. But I think that's how you get into that salary cap trouble. I think that's why we've been in a good position. Every year it's like, Washington has good space to make moves. It's because we're doing what we're doing. We get that one target We go and we bargain hunt, and we don't put ourselves into difficult situations where we're in bidding wars with other teams and having a lot of dead money eaten away in future years just to have short-term success. So
I do agree with that. I think we have a lot of intelligence and experience in our front office now, and people don't want to hear that. Maybe George is being too optimistic or whatever it is. We do have Marty Herney, we do have Martin Mayhew, we have Chris Poling, who is a former son of a GM as well. He's kind of been in the house for a little while now too, and I think between all of them, they are being prudent and smart with the investment of our team and kind of building it the right way. And that's why I want to harp on it yet, because we will talk about it later on. That's why I want to get a skilled position player in our draft at 11. That's why I want a wide receiver or maybe a cornerback at 11. I'd really like one of the Ohio State guys, like Olave or Wilson, as our wide receiver at 11, because I feel like, with the flexibility with Wentz, that does open up our window. If he's a pretty good quarterback, that's going to insulate him with talent. We have Garrett Wilson, we have J.D. McKissick, we have Logan Thomas, we have Curtis Samuel. Like, he's stacked. He has more than enough weapons in order for him to be successful. If he fails, it's on him. But if we have Garrett Wilson still, and when Wentz flops, that's where we can get a new rookie quarterback and drop him in, and now he's insulated with talent as well. That's why I love the whole focus on an offensive skill player. But we'll figure out. We'll see where that comes in a month or so. So, but Mark, let's pivot to you, man. So, $12 million. What do you want to do?
Cornelius Lucas is definitely number one on my board, because if you look at our offensive line, it is missing one piece, and it is him. There's no question. Granted, we could draft a tackle, which wouldn't hurt, but I'd love Lucas back. He was great for us last year, filling in. I think he's definitely the guy. But I want Bobby Wagner. I want him, because it's not so much of his play as much as it definitely is his leadership. And I think our defense definitely needs leadership, especially after last year, the headache. And, he's been there. He knows what it takes to win. I want him as a leader, especially with our young linebackers. There's one guy I mentioned to Ryan. He immediately shot me down. Look, we only have 6 draft picks, and we can definitely draft a running back. But if, Playoff Lenny wants to come on a nice cheap deal to
I saw that too, Mark. I did see that. I saw that. I don't know if it's high on my list. I've been pushing the narrative for running backs to keep dropping the little hint on Twitter. Yeah. People getting mad at me like, why? We have McKissick, we have Patterson. I'm like, dude, Justin Jackson's available. Who else is available? Damian Williams for the Chiefs is available too. There's some good players that are out there. So I don't know, but go ahead. Playoff Lenny, it's hilarious.
One, he can do both. He runs, and he can catch the ball. And not for nothing, Gibson's always been hurt. So why not shore it up with? He's only 27. If you can get him on a nice deal, so be it. And then
nice deal. I don't mean to cut you off, but he did just tweet that he's comfortable sitting this one out for a little bit, and he viewed himself as a top 5 running back last year. So he's not coming A to DC, I don't think, and B on a bargain contract. I don't think playoff Lenny's coming.
I don't know if you saw the leak, but they said Fournette and Landry were pretty much going to come to Atlanta if Watson went there. I heard little whispers about that. I don't know if you guys caught that at all.
Yeah, that went well.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious.
2 other guys, Zach Pascal and Derek Barnett. Barnett obviously didn't have the success that they had hoped in Philadelphia, but it'd always be nice to take an Eagle, bring him in, and put him in as a situational pass rusher. Yeah. See if you can, make something out of nothing, and that 1-year prove it deal. Who knows? And Pascal has, connections with
Pascal for sure.
Heineke and Wentz. So he's a big guy. You can always add more receivers, and I don't think it would be an expensive contract. So those are the guys.
Yeah, shout out to Ref the District, Stoner and Perry. How you guys doing, man? What's up? They said what's up to us earlier. They said we like Jonathan Williams. He popped a little bit last year. How do you guys feel about him?
I liked Williams too. I think that's good when you look at like a depth play. And I think for me, I do think it's going to end up being McKissick, Patterson. I think Jonathan Williams will have a shot in camp to kind of battle it out with Patterson. But I still feel like that middle round, you're going to see us draft a running back. I just don't think it's like a playoff Lenny or something like that. I think they really like Antonio Gibson. So I think I think that's the guy they're going to build around. And McKissick is going to continue to play that third down role. And I think that's kind of good enough. But to Mark's point of Gibson always being injured, like you need that guy that's going to be able to step up. And Patterson did it a little bit, but like when he's down, we don't have that guy that feels like he's more of a bell cow.
Mhm.
So that's where I could see something like, Jackson. I think Justin Jackson was a nice player that you brought up, right? I think that's
Mhm.
a guy that has come in for the
25, 26
Chargers
too,
in the
so pretty
past.
young. Exactly. Mhm.
Exactly. And he's come in and played that role well for them. So I think something like that I could definitely see happening. But Jonathan Williams, I think he showed towards the end of last
He
season.
popped a little bit.
Yeah, and I think he'll have an opportunity to stick to the roster.
So that's a great pivot point, right? So, obviously free agency is currently going on. The draft's upcoming in about a month. What are some big holes on the roster that you guys still think needs to be addressed? Like, what are some big things, some big, big rocks we need to fill? Start off with you, Ryan. What do you got?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things for me is, and I know we have some decent depth at weapons from a wide receiver standpoint, but Logan Thomas coming off of the ACL injury scares me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I know John Bates plays well, but he is more proficient as a blocker than he is as a pass catcher. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that's a hole. So if you see someone like a Gerald Everett or someone like that maybe you could get
Mm-hmm.
in for cheap, I wouldn't want to give anybody a long-term contract, but if like Austin Hooper, those guys that you could maybe bring in for 1 year prove it deals to give that depth, I think that's something we need to address before the season starts. I would like to see us get a little bit more depth on that interior offensive line and the interior defensive line, and then middle linebacker. I just want to see some presence there that we feel like we're not desperate going into the first round of the draft, needing to address. So I think those are kind of like the areas that I really want to focus on. But yeah, that tight end position scares me because Logan Thomas, great when he's healthy, love
Mm-hmm.
him, but it's just he's coming off that injury. I don't want to go in and put all our eggs in that basket. So
Yeah, I actually like Gerald Everett too. And I think it's funny going into the draft, the tight end position was one of the deepest in the free agency pool. But basically they've been flying off the board. I was hoping for like a day that Zach Ertz would kind of fall over here and come to Washington and rejoin with Carson Wentz, but that kind of went
got
away
paid.
fast.
Yeah,
Just double checking Austin Hooper. I had my eye on him
Yeah.
as well, but he signed with the Titans yesterday, so he's gone
oh,
on a
he did
1 year
yesterday.
deal. So they're
Good
flying.
one.
They're flying by quick. I think Gerald Everett would be nice. He's more of a pass catching tight end. Robert Tonyan from the Packers. He's a pretty solid tight end as well. But I think he's coming off. Is it maybe an ACL or his Achilles? One or the
He
other. I know
just
it's a
think
he
leg.
just resigned
Oh, did he
this
resign
evening.
too for the
Yeah,
Packers?
he
Oh wow,
resigned
they're
in Green
flying,
Bay.
dude. So yeah,
Yeah,
I keep an eye on for him.
that's definitely the biggest disappointment because I was like eyeing up Hayden Hurst, one of those guys to
Mm-hmm.
try and be there, but they're gone. I mean, it really is Gerald Everett. That is pretty much it. Or you're looking at Eric Ebron, those guys are gone. So I think that's definitely a position you have. If you do not fill it right now, it's gotta be the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Um,
gonna give you one name that I kind of like, and I liked him coming out of college too, is Tyler Conklin. So he's an available guy, coming from Minnesota. I feel like he
uh,
stepped in pretty nicely
He
last
did
year,
actually,
especially
yeah.
after Irv Smith went down. He had his career highs in snaps, receptions, and receiving yards and touchdowns. And I
It
feel
was a
like
great one.
he's a good reserve, right? It's not gonna break the bank, but he's a good enough receiver where he can step in and at least give
he
us that
signed.
weapon.
He signed
He
with the
signed
Jets.
too.
Yeah, this is why I keep
Man,
my Excel spreadsheet. I like
That's awesome. Thank you for the update. You're doing a
this is
great
like
job.
over the last
Fantastic.
24 hours then too, because
No,
this
I
is
think Conklin's been a couple days.
really.
Conklin is gone. Yeah, but
Ah,
they're moving. So
They are moving.
that is definitely the position that scares me the most right now. Other than
Yeah.
that, though,
Yeah. So Mark, dive into it. What do you got?
and I think you see this is why another reason why the free agency's been so slow is we had so many injuries last year, so they got a chance to see a ton of
Mhm.
guys, especially
Yeah.
across the defensive front.
Mhm.
I mentioned Barnett, but at the end you have, James Smith Williams, Casey Tuhill, Shaka
Mhm.
Tony. I think they like all those guys.
Mhm.
D tackle. You had David Bada that played well, Daniel Wise. They like their players, and that's why John Toth is back. Tyler Larson's back. All these guys are bringing back. They got a lot of action last year, so I think that's why they have 67 guys on the roster right now. I think that's why another reason why free agency is slow. Other glaring holes, though, we don't know what they're thinking. Yes, we want another backer. I agree. We want another weapon. But tight end, I think, is the biggest. I mean, I think slot corner, that guy to play that, in the slot, I think that's a need. but you've got Cam Curl that can play there. You have options on the
In
roster.
theory, Kendall Fuller
currently.
can bump down there if BSJ can go on the outside too, on the boundary corner too. So I mean, there's some flexibility, but like I'm worried about his concussions and his long-term health. That's definitely a worry of mine as well. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. Is there anything else
But
we jump on?
No, I think, glaring hole wise, I think we're in pretty good shape because we've had all the injuries last year and they've been able to see. So I think the roster is really shaped right now to go get the best available player. Just go take whomever it is, whether it's a corner, whether it's, it may be guard, whatever it may be. You never know. You never know. But I love building the lines. But
yeah, you guys are really high on the lines. That's really impressive. You guys are all for that.
Always.
So for me, maybe I'm like being too like I'm optimistic or trying to buy into too much of this like analytics and stuff like that. I feel like the lines you can kind of solve later on in the draft. You can get like a third round. We don't have a third round pick, but you can use a third round pick to be a starting guard or something like that. Obviously, a tackle you go first or second round, but I kind of like the upside of having more of a skill position players, maybe like a cornerback or a wide receiver at 11. But yeah, I mean, if you guys are all about, I mean, and also Matsko did a great job as offensive line coach last year. He basically really he took we're like on our fifth center, I believe, or something midway through the year, at the end of the year, and right guard. We had one of our best collective groups in a very long time. So we'll see. But I agree with you there. Makes sense there.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Anything else you're gonna say?
I mean, the receivers are getting better and better every single year. The focus on route running has drastically changed the classes year in and year out. So it does allow for those receivers to fall in the second and third rounds. It's just how, the biggest thing for me is you have teams that when they draft, they take a position that just makes them that much better. It changes the dynamic of that roster. And personally right now, if Jordan Davis, who potentially could be the best player in this draft, is there, why not take him? He makes your defensive. I know he's a defensive.
That's lineman for the 6th year in a row, or no, it's been linebacker last year.
He legitimately may be the best player in this draft, and he's an absolute freak. So if a guy like that's on the board,
Kyle Hamilton had something to say about that too, though. He's pretty solid.
I'm agree. Like he's the number one guy that I would target at 11. I don't think he's there, but but I am with you on that.
I would love if Kyle Hamilton.
That would change the game. That'd be all. You just don't even think twice. You just pick him and you kind of roll with it there. So, all right. So let's talk about this. We're gonna go the draft, but we'll do free agency first. So before we dive into the draft, what are there any free agents that you would bang a table for? Like, I want this guy on our team.
It's Bobby.
Ryan, we'll start off with you.
Mark just jumped in with Bobby Wagner, I think. So I'll let him. I'll let him take it real quick.
It's Bobby Wagner. I'm pounding the table.
Okay. Again, just his leadership and he would kind of complete the defense, in your opinion. What are you thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone says that he's 32. How many years did London Fletcher play for us? I feel like he was there for.
I'll look it up. I think maybe 4 years, possibly.
I think it was 4. Okay. But he was 32 when he came in. And is Bobby Wagner going to be able to be all over the field and run with that? No, but he's still very productive at his age, and I think he absolutely will be the leader of that defense.
And I think it'd just be like a master class of linebacking, right? Like inside the locker room, like watching the films, it'd just be him coaching up Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb, who both are like, people kind of sleep on Cole Holcomb's physical ability. He's a burner. He's actually pretty fast, pretty agile. And you have him and you have Jamin Davis, and he's coaching them up. And this is where I want you to be, and lining them up and just having them read and react. That'd be pretty impressive. So I would definitely be interested in that. I've heard mixed things. I've heard it's like people I've got a couple of DMs like Washington's really, really interested in Bobby Wagner. And I've got people say, hey, John Keim said he's too expensive on his podcast. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but we'll see how it goes. And honestly, I'm looking at this now. Just London Fletcher. He played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years for Washington. I had no idea he played that long, but good for him, man. It's like wait till he's 38 years old. So he's the Iron Man. It's what he really is, man. So
that's what he was.
there.
He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. That's an absolute shame.
Man. I thought it was 4 years, 7 years, man. Wow. All right, Ryan, what do you think? Who's your free agent number 1?
I kind of want to be that bargain basement shopper here a little bit, and I do think that Gerald Everett would be a nice one because I think he's a decent receiver. It's an area of need. I look at someone like a Darrell Williams, right, who's played guard and tackle, who has that roots in Carolina that the staff probably knows pretty well.
Mhm.
And then it's going to be a kind of weird one, but like I'd love to see us get a veteran receiver that can come in and contribute right away. We have a lot of developmental projects out there, but like an
Mhm.
Emmanuel Sanders or someone like that on a 1-year deal, Mark's going to tell me he signed within the last 12 hours, but
Exactly.
No, 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 no.
Still
no,
free.
but like someone like that, that's like just a technician at the position, a great route runner would be a nice compliment to Terry McLaurin and maybe, you know,
Mhm.
alleviate some of that pressure off of him. And
Mhm.
make that less of a need going to the draft. But like, there's not that one guy. It would be, you know, smaller contracts, 1-year deals like that that can help us fill out the roster before we go into the draft.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So speaking of the draft, good little pivot right there, right? Washington picks at 11, we pick at 47. You know, I was looking at our draft board. We have to hit on these picks. We have to hit on these early 2 picks because we, you know, after that, you know, 1 and 2, we go all the way to 4. I think we're missing a 5 as well, and we have 2 7s down the pike. So our premium picks are kind of few and far between in the draft. What would you, I'll open it up more so. I was going to say, who do you want at 11, but I'll give you any type of draft strategy you want, right? Who do you want at 11, and what would your draft strategy be? Who wants to start that one off? Mark, want to go for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
ahead.
I'd love to see a trade down with Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Slide back, potentially grab a pick next year.
Okay.
And then draft Chris Olave.
Okay. There you go. That'd be awesome. Home run. That'd be a home run right there.
That is absolutely my dream.
Okay. What do you like about Olave over the other wide receivers?
Olave was a guy last year that I loved. Well, before I go there, my number 1 receiver is Wilson.
Okay.
I love Jameson Williams and I love Olave.
I like Williams too.
Those are my 3 guys that my top
like those,
3.
those burner fast twitch guys. I see that. Okay, gotcha.
Amazing route running. That's what I want. So just being on the board at 21, I think Wilson and Williams are gone, and then Olave is the guy. Gotcha. So that's just a matter of, you know, guys being gone. So that's why it's Olave.
I think Williams is off the board.
Potentially. I mean, yeah, he got hurt. When did he tear that ACL?
Championship game, I think, right? Or the semifinals, one of the last 2 games of the year.
It was semifinals. So we're saying this is it's got to be, December. So, I mean, does he have the potential to be ready? It's going to be close. It's going to be close.
It'll be close. Yeah.
But the guy's 6'2". He runs some of the best routes you've seen. I love him. So guys are going to take London, and
what's up, Rio?
Williams is definitely. I think he's gone by 21. If he's there, I'd love to take him. But I think, Olave 21.
Now I'm with you. I think people are keep like harping on like the big wide receivers. We need a big body wide receiver. Like I think that's kind of fading in the NFL. Like if you have an awesome big wide receiver that's also a nuanced route runner, that does change the game. But I think the route running takes precedence. I think nowadays with all the rules kind of favoring the offense and creating and opening up things on your own, I do like those. I'd rather have a Garrett Wilson or Olave or Jameson Wilson, like as you mentioned, because I think they just win fast. And I think with Carson Wentz, quick slant, a hitch, or something that's really easy that you can constantly, rely on 3rd and 7. Here we go. That's going to be more meaningful in the long run as things go down the, as things go down the pike. Rio says Wilson and Olave are speed demon route technicians. I agree with you, man. 100%. 4.340.
100% on Wilson,
burners, man. Yeah.
And wouldn't that be exciting to see Wilson opposite Terry? Like there you go, man. We're on the same page in the chat. Like it would just be, they just feel like they complement each other so well. I also really like Traelyn Burks. I know that, Mark's not as high on him as I am. I do like him. I think when I watch him with those 50-50 balls, it's just, I think he's a stud. But he kind of reminds me a little bit of like, I don't want to say he's like a Vincent Jackson, because he's definitely more of a playmaker than Vincent Jackson was, but he's got more like athleticism and shiftiness, but he does kind of give me a little bit of that. And then he's like not as technical of a route runner as like a Keenan Allen. But like I feel like Traelyn Burks is going to be a successful wide receiver at the next level. I mean, when it comes to strategy,
right after the catch too, he's a pretty tough player as well.
Very good after the catch. And I think that's something that like adds that dimension to our game and to Scott Turner's offense. And I think he likes to give his playmakers an opportunity to win after the catch. And that's why Curtis Samuel was going to be such a nice fit. And he tries to be creative with Antonio Gibson, because those guys are so good once they have the ball in their hands. Traelyn Burks kind of fits that mold to me. So I could see us kind of moving in that direction. I've just been so beat up for 30 years on quarterback that I know people don't like when I say this, and they want to see us like get that piece that makes us a winner. And we just added Carson Wentz. But if someone like a Malik Willis that I feel like can add such a dynamic part to the run game and, has that big arm that can excel in a vertical offense, or even a Matt Corral. Like ideally, I'd like to trade down if we were going to go that route to acquire picks. I don't think we have a third or a fifth.
You like Corral? You brought him up a couple of times. He's a fighter.
Yeah,
in
I
the
do.
SEC too. Yeah.
So I like guys that have like an elite skill set within the quarterback position, and I feel like his elite skill set is his ability to throw from a lot of different arm angles.
Hey, Mark, check this out. This is you see what Rio's saying? So Rio, I don't know if you caught it earlier. He was like, we should get a guard at in first round. I was like, oh man, I don't know about all that. This is Mark was all over that. I don't know if I want to guard our DT in the first round either. Rio, I agree with you, but go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry to interrupt
I'm with you, and I do agree with the analytics on the interior linemen. Like I feel like that third, fourth round, like you can get interior linemen in those spots. I wouldn't hate it if we snagged a tackle early on. If one of the tackles fell, like an Evan Neal or someone, that they won't. The tackles never fall, but if they did, that would definitely be something I'd look at. But like, it is exciting to think about a receiver that would complement like Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin so well. Like just the two of them, both Ohio State guys. Like I think
Terry, Ohio State receiving corps be wild, it'd be crazy.
Yeah,
taking Ohio State receiver every single year.
Isn't Brian Hartline the receivers coach there, the former wide receiver? Yeah, so it's just a receiving factor right now. There's producing wide receivers out there.
I mean, Jameson Williams was at Ohio State.
Isn't that crazy?
And he went to Alabama because he wasn't getting, the playing time.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, I mean, Alabama's ridiculous. I was watching film. I was watching I think Kyle Hamilton film a couple of years ago, and it was like all the like Najee Harris. It was like Jameson Williams on the bench. They're just so stacked at wide receiver. Just have blue chippers coming here. It's coming off left and right. It's kind of crazy.
But it's funny. Just real quick. Mark and I were talking about we talk about Kyle Hamilton and everyone's like, oh, he's going to be gone. He's going to be gone. But every year there are guys that tend to fall. And sometimes that safety position is one where people aren't prioritizing. They're prioritizing that left tackle, that number one wide receiver, that lockdown corner, quarterback. So I feel like it's probably a pipe dream, but that's like, if you gave me my ideal draft, like give me Kyle Hamilton. Like I'm a Florida State fan. He destroyed us, like 2 quick picks back to back against us. And it was just like, someone like that's a rangy free safety could be changing. But then I look around the dynamics of the NFL and I just look at all the playoff teams and I look at the offenses and we just seem so far behind. And I feel like Wentz is capable of getting us there, but we need more weapons on offense. I know we have like De'Ami Brown and guys that people like to talk about that are younger, and Dax Milne and those guys, but we need a stud. We need that guy that's going to come in opposite Terry and be that stud. And what if Terry leaves, right? Like Terry's not locked in forever.
It's a great hedge of your bet to basically get another wide receiver. If we're playing that franchise tag game with McLaurin and you have another wide receiver on the other end, it definitely is appealing. It's definitely interesting. It does protect you long term. I do think Washington's going to do everything in their power to keep Terry McLaurin. And imagine if he does have that like whatever we get. Let's say Wilson comes on our team and has that CeeDee Lamb impact. That's a player that kind of steps on the field and it's like 1,000-yard receiver on one end. And we're stacked, guys. We have a 5-year contract on a rookie wide receiver that basically it's going to cost $21 million on the market, but we have him on a rookie deal. It's fantastic. And I think it's like a no-brainer. I think you have to go that way. People talk about cornerback like Stingley maybe falling or Sauce Gardner maybe falling to 11 too. That'd be interesting. Kyle Hamilton, I actually scouted him for Full Press NFL and I watched his film. He's a beast, man. People think, he's not just a free safety. He plays slot corner. He kind of hovers in the middle more like a linebacker sometimes. He's just like a great football player. And it sounds silly. Like he is agile and he's a smooth runner. But my favorite thing about him is he doesn't miss tackles. He's a technician when it comes to breaking down. And he's 6'4" and he gets down with a nice little form and he brings him down every single time. And he is a sound football player. So that will kind of that'll kind of resolve that curse that we've had at free safety for a very, very long time. So that'll be interesting. But I think wide receiver, I'd love to have one over there.
Exactly.
Before we wrap it up, is there any other maybe another draft, someone you had your eye on in the draft that you're really interested in that kind of stands out to you, or anyone that's intriguing by any chance?
I mean,
maybe not for Washington, but in general,
they're throwing the linebackers out, which gives me hope that I want Bobby Wagner, but I still want to draft another kid just to keep the kids coming in and learning. So
keep it fresh, yeah.
They're talking about Chad Muma, however you pronounce it, and then the kid from Montana State. Bring in the kids, bring them all in, and they're later round picks that could only be great for us. So that's where I'd go later in the draft, linebacker as well.
Sounds good. All right, Ryan, what do you got?
Yeah, and I think it's Troy Anderson, right? The Montana State kid, and I think what's kind of cool about him is that elite speed, and he's the guy that played multiple positions in college too, right? Like I think
he was a quarterback.
He was a quarterback, and when I look at the defense, and sometimes I think of things like the miscommunications that you saw happen on defense. Like it's intriguing to have someone that's played the quarterback position that knows the whole field so well. And I think someone like that, just there's very limited tape on him, but the speed is there, the smarts are there. I've heard that Washington actually really likes him. So that's why I do think we're going to.
They met him at the combine, I think, too, right?
I think they a couple times.
Times. Okay, cool. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So this is why I truly do think there's a lot of really nice wide receivers in this draft class. And I think they're really going to focus on that in round 1. But I do think they're going to trade down to facilitate that happening, get more picks. They're not going to want to have no 3, no 5, maybe miss a 2 next year. They know that the team's not fully there yet from a roster depth and building standpoint. So I think that's going to end up being what happens is that trade down scenario, snag a wide receiver, and then you have that flexibility of in the 3rd round or 4th round grabbing a kid that you like and making that stretch draft pick.
Gotcha. All right, gentlemen, that was a great time catching up with you. It's fantastic as always. Let's definitely get together before on the draft. That'd be awesome to kind of talk about that when it's closer to maybe in April. It'd be awesome. Ryan, start off with you, man. Talk about where they can find you on socials, and if you have any projects or anything you want to promote, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I'm What Gibbs FF on Twitter. Definitely find me there. Very active on Twitter, especially with the Washington Commanders community, fantasy football as well. I also run a charitable initiative called Announce the Pick, which I'm actually working with our website designer to finally kick that off. I had some personal things last year that took priority, unfortunately, to kick that off. But it's a really great initiative where we get NFL players and fantasy football analysts to announce draft picks that you make in fantasy football. They do quick 15, 20-second videos for a donation to a charity. So we partner up with St. Jude's, Autism Speaks, a lot of really nice charities over there and drive some fun. So we raised 2 years ago, $5,000 or $6,000 just out on a grassroots campaign. Matthew Berry got involved, which was pretty cool. And that kind of kicked it off from there. But we'll be launching a site probably within the next month or two, as well as being very active on Twitter. So What Gibbs FF, come take a peek there and follow.
Sounds good, Ryan. Thank you. Mark, what about you, bro? Break it down.
Guys, you can find me on Twitter at Mark Crow. And George, thank you for tonight. It was a great time. Good to catch you.
Genuinely appreciate you having us both on.
It was an awesome time, of course, man.
Yeah.
And as you guys know, I'm George Carmi at GCarmi21. I write for Full Press Coverage. You can definitely check us out on our podcast. I have some upcoming articles about the 10 best remaining free agents. Should be out by Monday. I'll be looking at Kenny Pickett, doing a profile for the draft. And then I'm eventually going to reflect on Washington's needs going into the draft after free agency. So those are my upcoming articles. It was a blast as always, Mark and Ryan. I love talking to you guys. And legitimately, let's get together in about a month. That'll be awesome. Everyone else, have a great night. Take care.